Good afternoon. My name is Peter Pulsifer. I'm a professor of geomatics in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies at Carleton University. A bit later, I'll be joined by my colleague, Stephen Fai, who is with the School of Architecture and Urbanism at Carleton. In my portion of the talk, I'm going to be talking about establishing an urban infrastructure mapping and research program. Many of you here probably knew Geoff Zeiss. Geoff was an innovator and global leader in developing effective and sustainable urban infrastructure. And in particular, he was interested in mapping urban infrastructure and thinking about the information systems that describe and analyze those infrastructures and so on. He had a very long career, long and distinguished career, many achievements over many years, including things like the UK Underground Registry, a number of initiatives in the United States. He's very active in Canada as well. He's American by birth, but moved to Canada later in his life, established things like the Canadian Underground Forum, and of course, this meeting, SUMSF. He started this meeting, and I'm really pleased that you're able to join us to continue the SUMSF tradition. Geoff was a real advocate for standards and standardization in this field, and an expert in the area as well. In particular, he was very active with the Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC. And Geoff was a real community builder. So he had a passion for bringing people together and really wanting people to work together collectively for the greater good. So for example, the GeoIgnite socials were a thing that he put a lot of time and energy into organizing. Sadly, Geoff passed away on September 14th of 2022 after a battle with cancer. And we're saddened by Geoff's loss. But at Carleton University, we are carrying on in Geoff's memory with the Geoff Zeiss Urban Infrastructure Mapping Fund, and we're working to develop a program under that fund. So we really want to build on Geoff's great work over his career, the vision that he had, the innovation that he contributed to in urban infrastructure, and through research development, very applied research, I think active and applied research and development, and community building. We want to support the efforts to better understand urban infrastructure and information systems. There are a range of possibilities that we've talked about, and as we develop the program. So initially, likely starting small with things like graduate and undergraduate scholarships and funding that can then expand to something like postdoctoral fellowships. And then over time, working towards things like an endowed or industrial chair, or eventually a permanent chair for this work to lead the research. So at Carleton, we are coordinating across disciplines. I'm with geomatics, as I mentioned, and geography, but we know that this space is much broader than that. So we're thinking at different scales and across many different topics. And so we're reaching out to researchers in different disciplines, and we're not looking to limit this to Carleton. We're definitely wanting to engage other institutions, and not just universities and research institutions, but any others in the community who are interested in and want to engage in this type of thing. So we're at the early stages, but we are trying to move forward. Just to give you a little bit of background and then where we're going, starting really in a large way with SUMSF at our meeting here. In July and August of 2022, Geoff and John Murphy, who's here with us from Go Geomatics, they approached us about developing an endowment or a fund to try and keep Geoff's work moving forward in some way. So we worked together on a document that's being used to guide some of the work, and that we want to further develop into a more formal publication. And on September 9th, I had the pleasure, the honor of meeting with Geoff for a couple of hours over the phone. I didn't work closely with Geoff, but I did actually work with him some 20 years or so ago in the area of making, in that time, an Autodesk product open source. And so he was engaging and working in geospatial open source. And so we talked a little bit about that, but we mostly focused on really understanding more what his interests are, the themes and priorities, what he thought needed to be addressed going forward. And so I documented that. Again, sadly, after Geoff passed, shortly after that, on the 14th of September, we set up the site that I provided the URL for on the last slide, and that is still in place, and we're working towards raising funds through that, along with Go Geomatics. And so Go are a big driver in this process, and we're working together and bringing our different strengths together to move the program forward. After a number of consultations, meetings, and so on, and activities over the past months, we're really wanting to focus now on community engagement to what we call co-produce the program. That's a real priority for us. So I'll talk a little bit about that as I wrap the talk up. For the next part of this talk, I just want to go over some of the potential program themes that were outlined by Geoff, and particularly during that conversation that I mentioned on September 9th of last year. So one thing Geoff thought was really foundational, and I think many in the community would agree, is just data collection and management. So there's a big cost component here. We're all looking for timely data. We want complete surveying and so on. And so trying to move things forward on the data collection side. So a big part of that is the technology. So he was looking at things like, taking existing technology, how do we improve data flows, connection between devices and data infrastructures, looking at new technologies like underground asset surveying using drones, using ground penetrating radar, magnetic imaging, and so on. Some interest in things like consumer devices. We have things now like we have iPhones and other devices with LiDAR, and how could they be used? There are obviously limitations. Those are not, professional survey quality devices, but what kind of role could they play in the ecosystem of different tools that we might use? And recognizing the critical aspect of skills development is of ensuring that we have the people needed to actually move forward in this space from a knowledge and capacity perspective. At the higher level, Geoff was also really interested in thinking about policy narratives and governance, data governance in particular. And so an example in the document that I mentioned that he brought up was this idea that, $4,000 per hit or per incident where there's damage to infrastructure adds up to about $50 billion. And that was a 2016 statistic that he referenced. And this is really in a large way due to incomplete and inaccurate data. If we had the complete and accurate data, we could avoid maybe not all of those costs, but some of them at least, or a significant portion of those. That relates to things like data policy, and we need to ensure that the policy is keeping up with the needs. So getting the right data into the right hands at the right time was something that he talked about. And then also aligning, the ever increasing and rapid development of technology with data policy as well. So not just the data needs, but thinking about what the implications of new technology are and how those need to develop as well. Digital twins, you're hearing a lot about those. You'll hear more about those in Stephen's talk. But this is something that Geoff's really interested in, and seeing that as the endpoint in a way for a lot of the data that's collected and the data infrastructures and so on, and really where we need to be going as a society. So combining all of this into something like a digital twin. And so he talked about the possibilities of doing that at the asset or individual company or city level, but the real need to do it at a regional level. So there's that collaboration idea, again, the need to bring people together to do this at a regional level, but then of course bringing those systems together at the national, international level as well. And so he saw a lot of opportunity, taking advantage of these lower collection and storage costs. So we've got that working for us. And so bringing this together into a digital twin could help reduce overall costs and increase safety, which was a big part of the end game for Geoff and for all of us as well. And going back to this idea of technology is, in this space, looking at new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on, and what role they can play, and then also what the implications of using those technologies are. And last but not least, and certainly this is not comprehensive, I've only given you 4 examples. There are many others in our conversation and that paper development that came up. But system and data interoperability. And so I think we all, and Geoff included, see this as foundational. And so if we're really going to make things like digital twins happen and have systems that can help us to avoid the kinds of damages that we talked about earlier, we need to be able to move the data between and among systems. And this is system to system, but the digital twin as well is you're really bringing in different domains or different disciplines, different professions as well. So you're going across scales. So you're taking things from, very, very large scale, building level right on up to the international sort of global level in different geographies. So that's a big challenge, but there's lots of work that's been done by groups like the OGC that Geoff was so active in. And we also recognize things like semantics being a critical challenge. So it's one thing to simply, transfer the data, move it into different systems, change its format. You have to be able to understand the data. And so there's recognition by Geoff that that's going to be a real challenge going forward. And for that, we need to look a lot towards standards and specifications, and that's really critical. So now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Stephen, and Stephen's going to tell you about the really cutting edge work that he has been doing along with his colleagues. And then I'll come back a little later to wrap up. I'm honored to introduce Professor Stephen Fai, who is going to tell us a bit about his exciting work on digital twins. And then there are a couple of minutes of my presentation that will play after that, just to wrap up the session.
Thanks very much, Peter. And thanks, John. I just would like to, as Peter mentioned, give a brief introduction to some of the work that we have been doing at the Carleton Immersive Media Studio in the area of digital twins. So first of all, my name is Stephen Fai. I'm a professor at the Israeli School of Architecture and Urbanism at Carleton University. I'm also the director of the Carleton Immersive Media Studio. So first of all, who is SIMS? What do we do? And then working with us to imagine a digital twin for Canada. And this is really a call for collaboration. So SIMS is a multidisciplinary research group. At Carleton, this summer we have 40 people working with us, mostly students. We have a few full-time people, but students from architecture, engineering, computer science, history, interactive media design. We have 4 areas of research. So digitization, so everything from laser scanning, photogrammetry. We do various types of modeling. We were one of the first groups in the world to use building information modeling in the context of heritage conservation. Something called digitally assisted fabrication, so bringing digital workflows to traditional craft and tradespeople, and finally digitally assisted storytelling, so really public engagement for using digital media. So I just want to briefly go over some terms: building information modeling, asset information modeling, and then digital twins. These are intimately connected, but not exactly the same. So in the case of building information modeling, one has architectural geometry, and this is linked to a semantic database that gives you information related to that object. This is the definition of building information modeling from ISO 19650, which is the international standard. We've been very involved in this space for the last decade and a half. We've done building information models of the Parliament buildings, including the library, and these models form the base for the current rehabilitation project that's happening on the Hill. Asset information modeling is post-construction modeling, and it's used to, as the title suggests, to manage built assets. This is a project, as an example, a project we've done for the National Capital Commission, which looks at the core of the National Capital. We've modeled all of the assets managed by the National Capital Commission, sculptures, lighting, posts, street furniture, etc. And this is a glimpse of that model viewed through a software called Twinmotion. Finally, digital twins. So what is a digital twin? According to Michael Greaves, a digital twin is a mirror image of a physical process. So you have a physical thing, you have a digital thing, and then there's an exchange of information between them. Not everyone has such a rosy attitude of what a digital twin might be. But I think the best example that I've come across is the notion of a jet engine, where you have a physical jet engine and then a digital replica of that jet engine. And you run simulations based on sensor data from the actual jet engine. That sensor data feeds into the digital engine. One makes adjustments on the digital engine, simulates them in the digital environment. You assure that the jet is, you've somehow enhanced its performance, and then you build it in the physical and then test it again. So that's the kind of idea that we're working with, and that's how we're defining a digital twin. So again, a physical thing, like a building, a digital representation of that building, the basis of which is a building information model, and then the exchange of data between the building and the model of the building. This idea has been really, the Great Britain has taken a leadership role. If you're not familiar with this initiative, I would encourage you to have a look, Digital Built Britain. They've developed 9 what they call Gemini principles. So what should the digital twin do? And why would we want a digital twin? Why would we want a national digital twin? And this is a project or a space we've been working in for quite a number of years. This is a project from 2012, project with Autodesk in Toronto, where we modeled their then headquarters on King Street, and link that model to live sensor data coming from the actual sensors mounted in the building. And these are some of the challenges that we encountered in that project. And as we scale up to the idea of a national digital twin, these are some of the problems that we see as technical challenges. And one of the main technical challenges really is what does it do? What are some use cases? And again, this is I'm reaching out to you as a community, and how do you see a digital twin being deployed in the underground utilities mapping space? So this is a demo of where the application is at right now. It's completely open source. What you're looking at is a mapping tool called MapLibre. And for scripting, we're using 3JS. Again, we can upload regular geometry or IFC geometry, so building information modeling information. We're also working at being able to display open source data from municipalities like the City of Toronto in this case. All of this data is being imported live from Toronto's website. So if there are any changes in that data, it's being managed by the City of Toronto and simply viewed in our browser-based application. We developed a very detailed model of the Carleton University campus. again, which can also be used in conjunction with open source data from the city of Ottawa. So that is a very brief introduction to the National Digital Twin Project that's happening at the Carleton Immersive Media Studio. And again, please reach out if you have any ideas or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Now I just want to wrap us up with a few slides on where we're heading with the fund. So moving forward, a critical strategy and opportunity for us is to partner with the Canadian Underground Infrastructure Register. And I know that they're expanding to be more North American focused, and will be rebranding, renaming, rebranding, and so on in the weeks and months ahead. But we had some great meetings with Steve Slizarenko and others at CURE, in the CURE community in earlier this year, in January, February. And we're looking forward to continuing those conversations as well. And so the idea there would be to partner with CURE and engage with CURE to establish some priorities, but also work together perhaps on collaborative projects. And there are lots of different ideas brought up in those meetings, everything from some of the policy things that I mentioned earlier, to looking at things like, using gaming engines for visualization in practical aspects like that. So there's strong interest on both sides to continue that, and we'll be continuing to follow up on that as it develops. Going forward, we want to take what I call a co-production approach, or it's a pretty common term out there now, but Geoff definitely left a vision for the research and development. I mentioned those and talked about a few of those earlier in the presentation, and we will definitely be looking to those as guiding and central to our work going forward. But we also want to make sure that we're working with the community to establish projects, programs, priorities that align with what people feel need to be done. And so we want to take this co-production approach that's defined there in very general terms, and use it as we develop the program. And so we are starting with this meeting actually to try and reach out more broadly to the community so that we can do that. And so in our next steps, that's our priority is to take what we started with Geoff and turn that into a more developed program description that includes, priorities and themes. And we would like input from the community while we do that, or as part of that, identifying these initial priorities, but also practical projects. So are there projects, what I think of in my work, where we develop systems as use cases that we can use to really sort of focus efforts, collectively develop resources into people and funding. By resources, I mean people and funding, and then expand the team and iterate over that. So tomorrow, on the 17th of May, we're expecting, we are sort of planning a workshop, and we'd invite you all to attend. I would really love your engagement there to further this work. Thank you very much for your attention. Going forward with the fund, we've had discussions with Stephen and his group about joining the effort, and he is interested, and we're looking at some specifics there, reaching out to some others in the university and starting to look at partners beyond the university. So one of the things that we really want to do, I mentioned earlier in my talk, is to co-produce this. So Geoff's vision and priorities, of course, are really important, but we want to make sure that this is something that will be able to benefit the community as a whole and be long-lasting. And so starting with a workshop tomorrow, running from 9 to 11 tomorrow morning Eastern time, we're going to dig into a little bit more detail about what community members are thinking in terms of areas that would benefit from additional research. And we are focusing primarily on university-based, but as I said, could go beyond that as well. And from there, we also want to move into a discussion of what kinds of initial priority practical projects might we do? And then thinking about potential resources. So whether that be, people and in-kind or funding proposals and that type of thing. And then what this would look like in the sort of short, medium, and long term in terms of expanding the team and moving forward with continuing in Geoff's legacy. And so with that, I will open it up for Q&A, and John can return.
Hey, thanks for that, Peter. It was great. So that's the first time that I think that the research goals have been shared in a like a conference setting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say these are preliminary. You said they came out of those discussions, and we're looking to hear more about your thoughts as well as any additional ideas people have, starting here and then tomorrow.
Absolutely. And thank you, Stephen, for presenting on the National Digital Twin Project. That's very exciting. Something I noted in your definition of digital twins, I know that there's a new digital twin that's been created by RBC, a financial digital twin. So that's going to maybe expand or challenge some of the definitions of what a digital twin is, I think, in future. Okay, everybody, the Q&As, if you're interested in learning more about what we're going to be engaging on tomorrow, now's the time to ask questions. I wanted to start things off. What do you think from Peter, Stephen, both of you maybe grab onto this, in terms of our early discussions about plans for research, what do you think are some of the most interesting areas to pursue?
Great, thanks, John. Maybe I'll start and just say, I think a couple of areas that interest me in particular, following on Geoff's vision and ideas. One is something we just saw a talk on actually with the previous speaker on digital collection technologies and new data flows and so on. And how do we then move those throughout the system, into digital twin models and so on. So there's already some great work being done on that, but I think there's a lot of potential now that we are starting to see the data collection ecosystem change, or the world of data collection. The other goes into the area that I'm more focused on in my research, which is interoperability, and thinking not just within the sort of mapping systems that are used within the profession, but going beyond into broader areas of society. And how do we get all of that data talking to each other and all of those systems talking to each other, and particularly the semantics. So those are two areas that I think are really exciting possibilities.
Yeah, I would share the excitement about the interoperability aspect. What we've discovered is that there is actually a lot of so-called open data out there, but you need specialized tools and knowledge in order to unlock it, that most certainly professionals working in the architecture, engineering, construction industry, they certainly wouldn't have those skills. So that's one area that we hope to continue to develop, is to make that information available to people. Secondly is clearly visualization is something that we're very interested in, and to continue to make that more accessible to people in the industry, in the construction industry, but also to the general public. So again, to be able to view data, but in a way that's understandable and that gets people excited. So that's, I think, two areas that are important to us.
Great, thanks for that. A question I think that speaks towards maybe a lot of the interests of the people in this conference. The research goals, how would they, could you help paint a picture of how they would help benefit the underground community, the stakeholders in the underground utilities industry.
Thanks, John. I think from my perspective, it's about expanding the possibilities for the community. So we see at this conference, there is a lot happening in the private sector and the public sector in terms of innovation. But through some of our partnerships that we're already starting to develop, including with a group called CURE, we're hearing there are other questions out there that people in the industry may not be able to address easily. There may not be time, there may not be expertise or resources. So what we'd like to do, I think, is complement the needs of the community to understand what kinds of questions are people asking that cannot be addressed by them, and how can we move that into the academic sector, but with really close connection to ensure that all of that new knowledge is directly injected back into the community.
Absolutely great. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
I was just going to say I agree with that, and also there are funding vehicles that are available through the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, as well as an organization called MyTax, where they will give matching funding for industry contributions in order to engage academia to solve real world problems.
Yeah, we're at the very early stages of this, so there's almost kind of limitless possibilities at this point in terms of it's an open discussion tomorrow. We're interested in hearing everybody's ideas, where they think things should be focused on, maybe some initial ideas on some low-hanging fruit that might be possible. Peter, you mentioned possibility of getting some things funded, like some graduate work or some PhD work. Would that only be at Carleton, or would that be available outside of Carleton as well?
No, I think we're taking a broad approach to this. What we really want to do is first identify the priorities, and then identify the key people or organizations that can help address those. So those may be at Carleton, but they might be at another institution or at a group of institutions.
Okay, great. Well, there's no more Q&A questions, and we're into the break now. So I want to thank both of you, Peter and Stephen. Is there anything you want to leave us with before some of us are going to be there tomorrow? Is there anything you want to leave us with? A parting thought? Yeah,
actually, I did just see an answer come, or a question, sorry, come up, and it actually fits with my own experience. My experience working with municipalities has been working with very small municipalities, 10,000, in some cases smaller than 1,000. So I think this could be an area that we could highlight as one of our focus areas. So I do want to encourage you to come out tomorrow and share those kinds of questions, anything like that with us, so that we can have a broader discussion.
Great, thank you. Stephen, anything you wanted to part on?
I just want to reemphasize, if anyone out there is interested in this idea of a national digital twin, or in digital twins generally, please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much.